Hey there, it's Tankerl, and this here is my review of the Nexus 5. I know you guys have all been waiting for this for a while. This is a review unit that Google sent me, and I've been using this as my main device for 2 weeks now. As you know, it's very rare for me to take my review units and make them my main devices because I'm a big fan of the Nexus. So basically, I wait for the Nexus every year and make that my main device. As you can see, this is a black unit. It also comes in white, which looks white in the back, and the sides are, instead of this matte soft touch finish, are like a shiny black sides on the white model. As you can see, the display in front here is gorgeous. It's basically the pièce de résistance. It's the 5-inch or so display, 1080p by 1920. Big improvement over last year, much brighter and more beautiful colors, and as you can see, the viewing angles are really lovely. I mean, this is up there with the HTC One and other fantastic displays, but it's not quite as good perhaps as a G2, which I'll show you in a second. So this is based on LG's G2 with a slightly smaller display and an 8 megapixel autofocus camera in the back instead of 13, but it does remain does keep the optical image stabilization, which is a really big deal. And of course, it's pure Android, uncontaminated by carriers or by anyone. This phone is unlocked, works on almost any network in the world except for Verizon. As you know, Google and Verizon have kind of been stepping on each other's toes a lot about this stuff, and I blame Verizon, frankly. If you're a Verizon customer and you can't get this phone, pick up your pitchforks and start going and talk to them. I would, maybe switch carriers for this one. So you can see in the back there's an LG logo down here, and the Nexus logo, which is really kind of cool and shiny. A bit of fingerprint magnet. And this here is the 8 megapixel autofocus camera with optical image stabilization and the LED flash. That's basically the back of the phone. In the front, you've got that fabulous display. As you can see here, there's a 1.3 or so megapixel camera. An earpiece, which is actually white on the white version, which is really nice. Some sensors you can't really see here, but in the bottom, you have a little notification light down here. Typical Nexus. We've seen this on the 4 and the Galaxy Nexus before it. And of course, that display. Now, walking through the sides and edges, there's a volume rocker here on the left-hand side. It's made out of ceramic, which feels really nice. A little sharp on the edges, but generally very nice. On the bottom here, you have two speakers, well, potentially just one really, and a microphone with a micro USB / slim port. So for video, you can basically it's using DisplayPort over a USB connector. And then on the right hand side, you really have nothing but the power lock key, also made of ceramic. And on top here, you have 3.5mm headphone jack and a secondary microphone. Of course, it's not just the screen that's been updated, but also the processor. Instead of an S4 Pro with 4 cores, like the Nexus 4 last year, this is actually running a Snapdragon 800 at 2.3 gigahertz with 2 gigs of RAM. So really, it's state-of-the-art, in terms of innards. You can't really get much better than this at this time. This is technically possibly one of the best cameras out there in terms of not being a camera-centric device. I mean, the Lumia 1020 is still going to be better, the Galaxy S4 Zoom, of course, as well. The G2 is better because in terms of resolution, it captures maybe a little bit more detail at 13 megapixels. But this is an 8 megapixel camera with autofocus and OIS. And OIS is a big deal. It really helps. Now, a lot has been said about the camera. Some people really don't think it's that good. But I can tell you, in my experience with my testing, this has been one of the best Android cameras I've used. There's a number of things I want to bring up, and I'm going to put a Nexus 4 in the way here so we can play. The biggest issues are around the software. As you can see, the viewfinder here shows a 16:9 view, but if I take that picture and line up the bottom here with the bottom edge of the display, maybe I should pull back a little bit. But say I focus on here, and I take this picture. So now I've taken the shot, but notice that there is my finger in the way down here and a bit of blank down here, but I had actually lined it up for the edge. So what I'm telling you is that the viewfinder doesn't actually show the reality. Now, this is nothing new. The Nexus 4, the Galaxy Nexus all had this issue. And basically the bottom here doesn't reflect how the picture is going to look in the end. So because the viewfinder is lens is a 16:9 widescreen when the picture's at 4:3. And so that's the biggest issue I have with this camera interface. There's a lot of other things, but you know, this menu system is not really the nicest. There is an HDR plus mode, which is kind of an interesting little thing. It really does help make the pictures more interesting, but it's a little time consuming. And also, it's not really an HDR mode per se. I mean, it does HDR. You can see this is a pretty clear shot, and again, the optical image stabilization does a very, very good job. But it's not really HDR per se. What it is something similar to what Apple's doing with the 5S, which is they are actually taking multiple pictures and not just doing that for exposure. They're actually kind of getting the best parts of all these pictures and combining them. And there's some bugs. Sometimes it doesn't come out quite right. But many times it does look really good. I tend to shoot with HDR plus more often than not. So again, the camera is, I think, pretty good. The consistency still has, compared to an iPhone 5S, the iPhone 5S is just mind-bogglingly consistent. You get great pictures every single time. If Google can make the camera better, the camera app, this is a no-brainer. I mean, the camera on this has a lot of potential. And it's not bad at all. I mean, right now, it's way better than Nexus 4. I think it's up there with the G2. It's up there with HTC One. Other things, it's super fast. I mean, this thing is unbelievably fast. Launching apps, look at that. That was Flickr. That's instantaneous. Let's see, surfing the web. Let's go to one of our favorite websites here. It's Chrome is right here. Maybe go to Engadget. They just redesigned their site. I used to work there. So I'm on LTE right now on T-Mobile. And, you know, here's the site. Now it's the mobile version, but yeah, so it's super fast. I mean, everything just happens instantaneously. You know, when you start Twitter, boom, here you are. You know, and I'm on LTE right now, so on T-Mobile, so things are pretty snappy. You know, Facebook. I mean, it's just instantaneous and super fast. You know, just everything is snappy, and that's really what's so rewarding about using this phone. It's just like night and day compared to the previous version. Now, it's not all perfect, but it's definitely the fastest Android phone I've ever used, and day to day I feel I'm super productive. So of course it's running Android 4.4, which is KitKat, which, you know, adds a bunch of features. The gallery is really quite improved. There's two galleries. There's the old one here and the new one, which used to be called the Google Plus Photos. I mean, here are some of the incredible pictures I've taken. These are low light shots. The amount of detail on here is staggering, you know. It's just incredible. This camera is just really impressive. And as you can see, it's just everything is super fast. Like, it's just instantaneous, you know. It has LTE on almost every band you can imagine. So if you are anywhere in the world with a SIM card right now, and of course HSPA Plus as well. So it supports all the bands you'd want for T-Mobile, AT&T, and other parts of the world. So, you know, this is becoming interesting because you really only need one phone anymore to go anywhere in the world and use it. What else? Wi-Fi AC, Bluetooth 4 LE. I mean, this is everything but the kitchen sink. You just can't go wrong with this phone. And of course, with 4.4, you get some cool things like, OK Google, what's the weather like in San Francisco today? So I've got it on silent, so it's not going to talk back to me. But as you can see, here's the weather in San Francisco with the forecast. It's very similar to the glass integration and to what we've seen on the Moto X. The difference is obviously it doesn't work when the phone's asleep. You kind of have to be in this screen. But nonetheless, it's nice. This is one of the improvements I've been really enjoying on 4.4. So that speed, the imaging experience in terms of the photo gallery. There's a new file picker that's much nicer. Lets you pick files out of Dropbox, for example, directly if you want to attach them to your phone. And again, you know, it's all of this for $350 for a 16 gigabyte model. This is a 32 gigabyte model, but nonetheless, that's only $400 given the choice. I mean, it's a no-brainer at this price point. You know, you're getting basically the same phone as a G2 for much cheaper. And you lose a bit on the build quality, perhaps, in the design compared to, say, an HTC One. But, you know, it makes it makes the Galaxy S4 look like a complete joke. And you get the fastest processor, you get a great camera, you know, all the LTE bands you can eat. I mean, yeah, basically, I think this is a fantastic device. But anyway, I have a couple of phones I want to compare this to so you can get a feel for things. So this is the G2, okay? You can see 5.2-inch screen, bigger on the G2, less bezel, maybe slightly brighter colors. Again, you're running a newer version of the OS. Now, flicking them over so you can see the back. This is a white G2, so it's shiny and it actually doesn't show fingerprints as much with its weird back buttons. But as you can see, the size difference is pretty insignificant. The G2 is a little bit bigger, but has a bigger screen. In terms of thickness, you know, this is what we're looking at. The G2 is a little thicker, but does have a bigger battery. The battery on the Nexus 5 is only 2300 milliamp hours, which is actually okay. I have no issues with it going for an entire day. Here's a more thickness comparison so you can see. You can generally see that the architecture overall of this phone is very much the same layout. Speakers are in the same place, except for the buttons. Most things are in the same spot. Interestingly, the headphone jack's on the bottom of the G2. Battery life is certainly something a lot of people have written about, and I haven't had any problems with battery life on my Nexus 5. There are times when it's been shorter than I expected and times it's been longer than I expected, but after 2 weeks it's settled down to a pretty great spot. And I think that most people will easily get a day's use out of it. You know, I have my Pebble tethered to it, I have Google Glass tethered to it, my car tethered to it by Bluetooth. So I'm using a lot of Bluetooth, and yet the battery life still holds up. So your mileage may vary, but I don't think the battery life is an issue on this phone. I think it's about the same as an HTC One, which for me is fine. It's not as good as the G2, but I think certainly totally a daily charger, no problem. I wouldn't be complete with this review if I didn't compare this to the Nexus 4, and obviously I pulled out the Nexus 4 earlier for the camera stuff, but here is the Nexus 4, and as you can see, the screen brightness is obviously a big difference. And of course, you know, you can change that. You know, I can cheat a little bit, but they're all on auto right now. So, but overall, you can see the difference in size. It's a little narrower than the Nexus 4, but a little taller, and a little thinner, and a much lighter. So that's basically, you know, of course, 720p versus 1080p, blah blah blah. It's just a big improvement. If you have a Nexus 4, this is a no-brainer to update. If you have an HTC One, especially a Google Play Edition or G2, this is a much harder update. So here's what they look like. So you can see the size and the thickness comparison. This is a white Nexus 4, obviously. I like white phones a lot. There you have it. So yeah, you can't go wrong upgrading. Now, would you upgrade from a G2? Hard to tell. Of course, the software is better on this, but the G2 is slightly better hardware, better battery life, slightly better camera, slightly nicer screen. The HTC One is, although it's not as good spec-wise, is a really beautiful phone that feels really nice in hand. And you know, you can get a Google Play Edition, which is the only thing I would really buy. So it's hard to tell on that as well. But if you have anything else, even the Galaxy S4 Google Play Edition again, I mean, I think it's too plasticky and I don't like the design, so I'd get this instead. But if you already have one, obviously it's no point upgrading, I think, at this point. But anything else you have that's Android, even if you're coming from an iPhone 5 perhaps, and you want to leave the iOS ecosystem, you absolutely cannot go wrong with this phone. This is a phenomenal device. I cannot recommend it more. This is the best phone on the market by a long shot. So anyway, that's my video review of the Nexus 5. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'll catch you next time with another video. Cheers.